transcribed by TurboScribe AI, weaving narratives with every word. Upgrade to unlimited to eliminate this notification. In the journey of marriage, there are moments of quiet that catch you off guard, not born from frustration or weariness, but from an elusive distance that lingers unspoken. My husband and I were not in conflict. Our voices remained calm. We continued to share meals, exchanged laughter, and even reached out to each other across the table, a gesture born from familiarity. From the outside, we appeared to be thriving, even surpassing expectations. We were the couple that drew glances of admiration, embodying stability, success, and unwavering strength. Yet beneath the surface, there lingered a certain hollowness, not born of absence, but rather from the monotony of our existence. I could narrate his daily schedule from memory. It was as if I could predict the moment he would reach out, the words he would choose, and the way he would express them. Familiarity had woven itself into the fabric of our closeness. And at some point, I lost the sense of being genuinely recognized. He still reached for me at night, but it felt like a rehearsed act, courteous, as if checking off a list. Silence enveloped the moment, devoid of inquiries or hesitation, as I became acutely aware of the rhythm of my breath, or the absence of it. I caught my reflection lingering there, more than before selecting my outfits with a newfound intention. Not for someone else, but for a deeper purpose. The moment the message arrived about my stepfather's flight from Portugal, I found myself in a haze of confusion. An unexpected wave of excitement washed over me. Not happiness precisely, more akin to a tingling sensation enveloping the body. It had been ages since our paths last crossed. He didn't weave into the fabric of my everyday life. He was a relic of a different era, a reflection of a past self, one who held on to the notion that emotions could engulf my. When I turned 20, my mother and he parted ways, yet there remained a subtle bond between us that endured through the years. Festive phone conversations, brief messages, and the rare shared article. He was the kind of man who saw the details that often slipped past others. Expressions, feelings the way a thought concludes. The thought of him back in my kitchen, speaking in that deliberate, watchful manner, stirred a mix of warmth and unease deep within me. My husband, ever the pragmatist, suggested he could go to the airport to bring him home. It had been ages since he last laid eyes on him, he remarked. How about inviting him to spend the weekend with us? I nodded, sensing the ground shift ever so slightly beneath me. Upon his arrival, the rain fell gently, a soft and persistent drizzle that transformed the surroundings into a scene straight out of a film. He appeared more seasoned naturally, yet retained that stance, shoulders squared, eyes unwavering. He embraced me as if he were gauging the distance between what was and what is. I barely recognized you, he remarked. A smile spread across my face. Time has a way of weaving narratives. He brought a bottle of wine from Lisbon and tales that spanned across nations and decades. During dinner, he absorbed the words around him, allowing my husband to weave the narrative. Yet when I laughed, his gaze met mine from across the table, and an ancient spark ignited between us. a sensation that had eluded me for years. Understanding, as the evening settled in with the dishes neatly put away, and my husband tucked away upstairs, engrossed in his laptop and a spreadsheet, I found myself stepping out onto the back porch. The rain had ceased, leaving behind an aroma of damp bark and the refreshing scent of cool soil. He approached quietly, offering me a glass of wine with a knowing glance. He remarked that you have always had an affinity for the stillness. I nodded my fingers, wrapping around the stem, ready to weave a tale. I continue to do so. There are moments when things slip my mind. He remained silent for a moment. It seems like there's more to your weariness than just the physical aspect. That took me by surprise. My husband never shared words like that. He praised my efforts, my knack for organization, my productivity. Yet weary exhaustion suggested that someone had been observing. At last, I spoke the truth. Yet it's a weariness that lingers long after rest has been sought. He looked at me, his eyes unwavering. I'm familiar with that type. It was something deeper. It was merely a revelation. It was acknowledgement, and it resonated within me more profoundly than any praise ever could. We lingered in that moment, time stretching around us, in a hush that carried an air of both peril and truth. As I made my way upstairs, I found that my husband had already extinguished the light. I changed into something blouse, each movement deliberate, as if I were crafting a narrative with every fold. I reached for a nightgown. I seldom donned its fabric, whispering softness, the neckline dipping gracefully, and paused to catch my reflection in the mirror. The woman who gazed at me seemed to be caught in a moment, neither pursuing anything nor fully at ease in her stillness. As I nestled beneath the blankets, the essence of his presence clung to me, a vivid reminder of moments shared. Not my husband's, but his. Not from touch, but from something quieter, more magnetic. And I sensed, without saying it aloud, that I would seek another opportunity to be alone with him before the weekend came to a close. The following morning, I approached the day with a newfound intention, not with grand displays, but through subtle, intentional choices. I lingered in the shower, allowing the water to embrace my skin. As my fingertips began to soften, I reached for the lingerie that had been tucked away for months, ready to weave a tale of elegance and allure. Black lace, subtle, yet fitting perfectly where it matters. It wasn't out of expectation, nor was it an attempt to charm. I convinced myself it was a step towards self-assurance. Yet what about confidence? What's the purpose? He was already downstairs when I stepped into the kitchen, my feet bare and a towel still draped around my head. He lifted his gaze from the steaming cup in front of him. There was no comment, no lingering gaze, just a quiet recognition of my existence, and yet it resonated within me more profoundly than 1,000 narratives. We navigated breakfast like seasoned travelers, each moment unfolding with a quiet familiarity. My husband set off for work at dawn, mentioning a meeting in the heart of the city. The stillness in the house wrapped around me heavy and palpable in his absence. My stepfather lounged by the window, engrossed in whatever caught his attention on his phone, his glasses resting just above the tip of his nose. I filled my cup with coffee, but my hands felt unsteady, clumsy, in a way that took me back to a time long ago, as if I were once more a teenager, viewing him through a fresh perspective. "You always had a fondness for the mornings," he remarked, his gaze fixed elsewhere. I took a moment to reflect. Not quite like before, but today carries a unique vibe. That was the initial fracture, the first instance we acknowledged even subtly that a change was underway. As the clock approached noon, I extended an invitation to him to explore the garden. He accepted, and together we ventured into the freshly damp yard, where the sunlight danced upon the grass, creating bright flashes of light. Everything appeared more vibrant than it had in months. The lavender bushes had burst into bloom once more, and I had been blissfully unaware. He wandered at a leisurely pace, his mind clearly engaged, taking moments to caress the leaves and inhale the fragrance of the herbs. I observed him from afar, feeling a twinge of longing in my heart. He found a way to connect with the world around him, savoring each moment as he paused to reflect. As I settled onto the small bench beneath the cedar tree, I found myself sitting a bit closer than needed, the space between us, charged with unspoken words, just near enough to catch the whisper of his breath when the breeze danced by. He recounted his adventures overseas, sharing tales of vibrant locales, bustling markets in Morocco, and leisurely drives through the enchanting landscapes of Tuscany. He painted a picture of a week in Kyoto that felt like a scene lifted from the pages of another's tale. I absorbed every detail, yet my focus kept drifting to the graceful bend of his wrist, the soothing cadence of his voice, the pauses that lingered between his phrases. At one moment, I inquired if there was ever a sense of having overlooked something by not choosing to settle down once more. His gaze shifted in my direction, soft yet raw, revealing everything beneath the surface. Absolutely. Yet I discovered how to embrace the kind of love that I could hold close to my heart. I'm not sure what prompted my question. "What type was that?" He paused for a moment before responding. "The kind that lingers in your mind, even when the moment has passed." A sensation gripped my chest, a weight I hadn't experienced since my childhood, leaving me uncertain if it was yearning remorse or an insatiable desire. Once back inside, the atmosphere seemed to thicken around me. I found myself occupied in the kitchen, not due to any pressing tasks, but rather because I craved something to grasp onto. He entered quietly, just a step behind me. His presence enveloped the room, a silent prelude to the words that were yet to come. "You appear to be lost in thought." As I pivoted, the world around me began to unfold. It seems as though I'm wandering through a fog, unsure of my path and what lies ahead. We were nearer than one might expect given the weight of our shared past. He didn't lay a finger on me yet. His gaze seemed to seek approval that I was unaware I had already given. It was a moment that took everyone by surprise. It all happened in an instant. Without melodies, without those fleeting looks. It was a moment of stillness, fleeting yet profoundly impactful in its truth. He leaned in gently, a gentle yet uncertain touch. In that fleeting moment, the universe beyond the kitchen faded into oblivion. I let it unfold. I stood my ground. I found myself frozen in place, my breath held tight, as if my body had unearthed a memory I had long buried deep within. As we distanced ourselves, the air was thick with unspoken words, devoid of apologies or explanations. Just a heavy silence lingering between us. "I think it's time for me to take a break," he remarked. With a voice just above a whisper, I nodded. "Absolutely." He stepped out, and I stayed behind, one hand resting on the counter, my gaze fixed on the vacant coffee cup that lay between us. My heart pounded fiercely within me, yet my body remained steady and calm. I felt alive, and not in the way that caffeine or sunlight can rouse you, but in that thrilling, charged manner that stirs the atmosphere in a space just before a tempest. I lingered there for what felt like minutes, perhaps hours, as the sun dipped low behind the trees. With shadows stretching across the floor, I remained still, neither shedding tears nor breaking into a smile. I simply waited for what I wasn't sure, perhaps, for the guilt to settle in, yet all that occupied my mind was the sensation of his lips, and how it simply wasn't sufficient that, as evening fell, the house seemed transformed. Not in appearance. Nothing was amiss, but something deep within had changed. Like a painting slightly askew on a wall, I wandered through the room with a deliberate slowness, as if the very air could whisper secrets of what had transpired in the kitchen. The counter gleamed, the windows were shut tight, the remnants of lunch neatly washed away, and left to dry, there was nothing to accuse, nothing that could be identified. And yet an unmistakable shift lingered in the air. As the clock struck 7, my husband walked through the door. He pressed his lips to my cheek, inquired if I had enjoyed a meal, and remarked on the fragrant aroma of rosemary wafting through the hallway. I responded acknowledged and expressed all the appropriate sentiments. Yet my body seemed like a stranger. My skin radiated a warmth I had yet to discover. With him, I carefully navigated the evening, steering clear of his gaze for the majority of dinner. Instead, I focused on refilling our water glasses, folding napkins with precision, and posing questions that held no real interest for me. Across from me sat the man I'd married, the man who still wore his wedding band with unwavering certainty. He was reflective, considerate, and consistent in every manner I had once longed for. Yet with each time his voice touched my ears, I sensed the void within it. Not harshness, not indifference, but richness, adventure, wonder. He inquired whether I had brought the car in for service, and if I had recalled to respond to the neighbor's email. A vivid memory surged within me, bringing forth the feeling of another's breath, tantalizingly close to my own. I made my exit early, claiming a headache, and settled onto the bed still in my clothes. As I gazed at the ceiling fan spinning in slow, mesmerizing circles, I found myself lost in the memory of that moment of reliving it over and over again. The pause that lingers heavy with all that remains unsaid captures more than just the instant we shared. I hadn't experienced that specific kind of longing in years not since before the bonds of marriage began to transform desire into a predictable pattern. The following morning, I put on my clothes with a deeper sense of purpose than I had the day prior. I selected a gentle blouse adorned with subtle buttons cascading down the front, tucking it into a fitted skirt that hugged my waist. It was understated, nothing brash, yet I was fully aware of the impression it conveyed. It transformed my form. I stood before the mirror, captivated by my reflection, tilting my head just so as the sunlight danced upon my collarbone. My body, once merely a canvas for comfort and utility, had transformed into a soft murmur of desire. Is there anyone to listen? There he was perched on the back porch, a mug cradled in his hands, gaze fixed on a distant point, lost in thought. He was completely unaware of my presence as I drew near. Perhaps he did, yet chose not to reveal it. As I settled into the seat beside him, he was the one to break the silence. I figured you might be steering clear of me. His tone danced with ease, yet his fingers clutched the mug with an intensity that hinted at deeper tales beneath the surface. I gently shook my head, a silent response to the unfolding narrative. That would be simpler. But simplicity has never truly been my forte. He nodded once, the corner of his mouth twitching, as if a smile was on the verge of breaking free. Yet he held it back, contemplating the moment. We lingered in quietude for a moment as the morning birds put on their familiar show just beyond the trees. A sense of awareness washed over me as I sensed his gaze lingering from the periphery, a silent acknowledgement of my outfit that I couldn't ignore. I won't be offering any apologies, he remarked in the end. I never thought you would. Do you find yourself wishing you had made a different choice? I released my breath gently. No, but I'm still pondering how to make the most of it. He held back. That was what set him apart from all the other men I had encountered. He could linger in the unease, allowing it to unfold. He chose to be open. With a blend of reason and humor, he simply embraced its presence. As the day unfolded, I proposed we embark on a journey into the city, just a little escape from home. I shared with my husband that we were in need of a few items from the home goods store. He accepted it without a word. He never did when I presented myself as organized and domestic. The journey was rather ordinary. The gentle notes floated from the dashboard, and I gripped the wheel tightly, not out of necessity, but from a deep-seated uncertainty about what might unfold if I let go. The journey was mostly silent between us. The city stood tall and imposing. Before me, the skyline stood more defined than I recalled. On that ordinary weekday, the roads were surprisingly gentle. I parked close to a quaint bookstore cafe I hadn't been to in ages, the sort of spot with worn leather chairs and mismatched saucers that gave the atmosphere a charmingly nostalgic vibe. With a quizzical look, he decided to follow along, curiosity guiding his steps. In the cozy corner, we stumbled upon a booth, waiting to share its tales. I decided to indulge in a soothing cup of chamomile tea. He requested just the rich, bold essence of black coffee, untouched by sweetness. As the drinks arrived, we allowed them to sit undisturbed for quite a while. In that booth, an encounter unfolded that was far more perilous than a mere moment of truthfulness. I once believed you noticed every little thing about me, I remarked, gently swirling my tea. I never sweetened it. He leaned his head to the side, as if pondering a tale yet to be told. Is it excessive? In those days, when you were part of our lives, your keen observations often left me feeling uneasy. Many men tend to overlook the depth and complexity of women. You did not. So that put you in an awkward position. Back then, indeed, I was uncertain about how to handle it. He reclined a bit, allowing the words to linger in the air. What comes next? Now I long for the moments when I was noticed in that way. Our hands remained still separated by the distance of the table between us. Yet it seemed to hold a deeper connection than anything I had experienced in my marriage for a long time. As we drove back, the atmosphere around us felt heavy with unspoken words. Each. The duration of the red light seemed to stretch on endlessly. Each jolt along the path more pronounced. I held onto the steering wheel with a fierce intensity. He gazed out the window, hoping the trees might reveal some hidden truth. As we rolled into the driveway, the evening began to weave its gentle tapestry of twilight. The glow of the porch light illuminated the evening, casting a warm welcome into the night. I switched off the engine, yet I remained still. "Are you going to join us for dinner?" I inquired, my tone steady and calm. He gave a slight nod, as if acknowledging an unspoken tale waiting to unfold. "Unless you prefer otherwise?" I never claimed that. As we emerged from the car, the weight of unspoken words lingered in the air around us. As the front door clicked shut behind us, a new chapter began to unfold. In that moment, it was clear we shared an unspoken understanding. A journey of no return had commenced, and neither of us was going to put an end to it. Share a tale about dinner. The evening held a stillness that felt unsettling, far from tranquil, full of energy, simply crafted. A crafted serenity that only just masked the simmering intensity lurking underneath. My husband claimed the head of the table, as he always does, expertly, carving the roasted chicken with his knife. Standard effectiveness. He shared little anecdotes about the traffic jams, the looming deadlines, and that one colleague who always seemed to misplace the attachments. I acknowledged everything with a knowing nod, shared tales of culinary delights, presented him with a glass of wine. I had gone through this routine countless times before. Yet that evening, each step seemed like a delicate dance on a tightrope. Across from me sat my stepfather, folding his napkin with the careful precision of a storyteller crafting his next tale. He was a man of few words, and when he chose to speak, his voice was measured and calm, revealing little of what lay beneath the surface. Our gazes intertwined for a fleeting moment from opposite ends of the table, concise, unwavering, and keen enough to cut through. I glanced down swiftly, my thumb pressing against the base of my wine glass as I sought to anchor myself in the moment. Though my husband may have sensed something unusual, he kept it to himself. He expressed his gratitude for the meal, complimented the sauce as particularly delightful, and then, as was his custom, stepped away to take a call. Upstairs, as he vanished from sight, the stillness in the dining room became palpable, heavy, with unspoken tales. I stood to begin clearing the plates, and at that moment my stepfather also rose his hand, lightly grazing mine, as we both reached for the same bowl. It was a simple act, seemingly harmless, yet my skin flared up like a match, ignited by his touch. In the kitchen we flowed together, our movements seamless, an unspoken passing dishes and glasses, as if guided by an unspoken understanding. Every moment was filled with a palpable intensity reminiscent of the atmosphere in the kitchen. It was a moment suspended in time. The sudden hiss of the faucet caught me off guard, more than I would like to admit. Once upon a time, a fork slipped from my grasp and clattered to the ground. He snatched it from the air just before it met the ground, his fingertips grazing my wrist. Once more that unseen flicker. Text. I ought to retire early this evening. I murmured, my gaze averted from him. His voice carried a depth shrouded in mystery. That sounds like a wise choice. I switched off the light and quietly exited the kitchen, leaving the upstairs without a word of good night. I held off on undressing immediately. I perched on the familiar edge of the bed, a spot I had claimed for countless nights, and absorbed the soft, distant murmur of my husband's voice drifting in from the office down the hall. He was engaged in another conversation, likely discussing figures, timelines, arrangements, elements he could manage, aspects that resonated with his understanding. With a decisive movement, I rose and unfastened my skirt, allowing it to cascade down and pool around my feet. The outfit I had chosen beneath felt like a shield and a revelation all at once. I stood in front of the mirror, seeking not vanity, but a narrative of my own existence. I longed to encounter the woman who had felt the warmth of a moment, of in the kitchen, who had quivered in the car, who had chosen chamomile tea, and confessed to yearning for the sensation of being truly noticed. And she was there, neither ashamed nor elated, simply existing in a way she hadn't experienced in years. As dawn broke, a surprising twist awaited. My husband entered the bedroom while I was still getting ready, holding his phone, with that familiar, slightly distracted smile he had when he was about to suggest something I might not be thrilled about, but would likely go along with. Next weekend, he mentioned he needs to head upstate. Gathering of minds. Just a couple of days. I nodded, adjusting my blouse to sit comfortably over my hips. All right. He lingered, his gaze fixed on me. How about joining me on this journey? It might lack excitement, but at least it's away from the hustle and bustle. I managed to put on a smile. You mentioned that it would be dull. What should I consider doing? Rest your weary mind. Request some delightful treats to be brought to your room. A little time away might do you good. That term. Pause. It hurt more than it ought to have. I couldn't help but chuckle at the way he had wrapped up my fatigue so perfectly. Perhaps. As I pondered my response, I gently sidestepped him and made my way to the bathroom. I shut the door softly and let the water run, hoping its sound would mask the rhythm of my breath. His intentions were good, I was certain of that. Yet his attempts came after the moment had passed, like nurturing a once vibrant flower. that has now turned to dust. He was making an effort in his own manner, yet he remained oblivious to my presence. Not quite. As I descended the stairs, I discovered my stepfather engrossed in a book at the kitchen table. He gazed upward, and a change flickered across his face. There was no exchange of pleasantries, no inquiries about rest or morning rituals. There was no necessity for that. The atmosphere surrounding us was thick with unspoken words, each one lingering like a whisper, waiting to be shared. "I feel like hitting the road today," he remarked, setting the newspaper aside. "Far from this place, only for a moment." I glanced back, a reflexive move to ensure. The echo of footsteps from above. "What's the next adventure?" He simply shrugged, as if the weight of the world rested lightly on his shoulders. In a place where silence reigns and the phone remains still, it wasn't the phrases that touched my heart, but the depth behind them. A soft request for room to breathe. Break free. There exists a world outside these confines and daily patterns. We kept it from my husband. I mentioned we were on our way to get some groceries. He nodded, lost in thought, fingers dancing across the keyboard as he crafted his next narrative into his device. The journey unfolded without a specific destination in mind. Our journey took us toward the setting sun, wandering through unfamiliar neighborhoods, then into vast expanses of lush greenery, where the trees arched gracefully above, resembling the soaring ceilings of a grand cathedral. We stumbled upon a quaint little road that had somehow escaped my notice until now. Untamed, unrefined, adorned with vibrant wildflowers and remnants of fences left to time. It brought forth a decaying lookout point that gazed down upon a parched creek bed and a swath of forest shimmering with golden hues at its borders. He came to a stop and set the vehicle in place. Silence enveloped us for several minutes. The scent of pine mingled with the earthy aroma of dust. I let the fresh air in by rolling down my window. The gentle wind whispered secrets. The heaviness of late summer, languid and unhurried. He remarked that this was an improvement. I shifted my gaze in his direction. And then what happened? Then, acting as if this is not unfolding, my heart raced, a steady drumbeat echoing in my throat. My gaze fell upon my hands clasped together with an intensity that felt almost too constricting. He extended his hand gently and without haste and brushed against my wrist. "I'm simply sharing my thoughts with you. I simply seek reassurance that I'm not alone in this experience. You are not." The words poured forth like a long-awaited flood, breaking free from the confines I'd held them in for so long. He edged nearer, allowing his gaze to linger on my features with greater clarity. "I prefer to be honest. However, I cannot feign anything either. I'm wary of the quiet moments." And I, with all my heart, realized that more profoundly than anything he'd ever expressed when our lips met once more, it was neither unexpected nor coincidental. It unfolded with intention, awareness, and precision. His hand lingered on my cheek, a steady warmth that spoke volumes. Mine wrapped gently around the fabric of his sleeve. We lingered in that space lips, almost brushing our breaths, intertwining far longer than one might expect for such a delicate instant. And when we separated, I felt no embarrassment. I experienced a profound sense of assurance. Yet I could sense the relentless passage of time. It was clear that our time in that spot was limited. I was aware that this car, this road, this day, none of it would linger. As I settled into my seat, my gaze drifted to the windshield. It's time for us to return. He gave a single nod. No arguments, no complaints yet. The silence that accompanied us on the journey home had transformed into something filled with unspoken tales. It was rich with understanding. Eventually, the truth would find its way to another's ears. Returning to the place we call home, all returned to its original form, as though the events had never transpired. The door shut, carrying with it the echoes of countless moments shared within these walls. The hallway lights whispered gently, bathing the floorboards in their familiar golden glow. The rhythmic tapping of keys echoed softly from above. Workspace. My husband remained just as I had left him, confined within the orderly segmented realm he believed in. Figures. Visual representations of data, gatherings. Everything was in its rightful spot, yet my body felt out of sync with that harmony. I made my way upstairs, seeking a moment to transform my appearance, not out of necessity, simply because I felt the urge. In a quiet moment, enveloped by the soft glow of our bedroom, I found myself gazing at my reflection, taking my time to shed my layers one by one. I removed each layer with care, as if I were uncovering the remnants of the person I had been just a month prior. A week ago, and even this morning, there was a certain intention behind the way I selected my new outfit. Neither too provocative, nor too indifferent. A rich burgundy blouse featuring an open neckline and sleeves casually rolled up, revealing the graceful curve of my forearms. Skinny black denim. Nothing in the way of adornment. My hair cascaded freely, with a playful strand tucked behind one ear. I preferred not to appear overly formal. I longed to embrace my true self, yet it was the version of myself I wished for him to witness. As I made my way back downstairs, I found my husband still immersed in his office, engaged in a video call. With headphones snug against his ears, his voice was soft and carefully measured. I walked past the door, not stopping for a moment. I simply walked in. He remained unaware. In the stillness of the kitchen, silence reigned supreme. My stepfather was absent from the picture. There he was, perched on the broad wooden step of the back patio, just past the sliding door. A cup of coffee sits beside him, its warmth fading, waiting for a story to unfold. He gazed at the trees as if they held the secrets to unspoken questions lingering in his mind. He remained still as I quietly opened the door, not even glancing my way, remained silent. I settled beside him in silence, allowing a gap for the air to flow between us. Yet I could sense the magnetic draw of his presence, like an electric charge in the atmosphere. "I had a dream about you," he said out of the blue. His voice was soft, not revealing secrets, just genuine. "What type of vision do you have in mind?" the kind that lingers in the morning light, evoking memories and emotions that resonate deeply. Once upon a time, there was a moment that held the essence of a tale, waiting to be told. I gazed forward, captivated by the graceful descent of a solitary leaf, twirling down from a lofty branch. My hands rested quietly in my lap, a moment of stillness before the tale began. My thighs were tightly pressed together. My heart thumped softly, rhythmically echoing more than it ought to have. I find myself reflecting on you more often than I ought to, I confessed. He was a master of weaving tales, captivating everyone with his narratives that danced through time and space. Each word he spoke painted vivid pictures, drawing listeners into worlds unknown where adventures awaited and lessons lingered. Long after the last syllable faded away, let out a gentle breath, as though that act granted him the freedom to inhale once more. So how do you make use of that? It's something I keep hidden beneath my garments, I mentioned. Wherever I wander, something changed in the atmosphere from that moment on. The lights softened as though the sun itself had taken a moment to hear the unfolding tale. I rose and descended the 2 steps onto the lawn, craving the space, yearning to experience. My feet on solid ground. He trailed behind just a moment later. As we strolled quietly along the garden path, we passed the slumbering rose bushes and the quaint bench nestled under the cedar tree. In this serene moment of the late afternoon, the world unraveled once more. It's a blur in my memory who initiated the moment, but I can vividly recall his hand resting on my waist, fingers unwavering against the fabric of my shirt. As I leaned in just as he did, it wasn't a matter of urgency. It lacked sweetness. It was a tale unlike any other, a clash of unexpressed desire, rooted in the understanding that this was destined to unfold once more, and that it indeed would. The moment held a different essence than the first one. It unfolded with a richness, a deliberate pace, and an unwavering confidence. He drew me in, and my fingers curled around the nape of his neck, sensing the coarse stubble and the heat radiating from his skin. The sound of my own breath filled the air. I could hear his tale. I could sense all that we hadn't expressed flowing into the void that separated us. There was a calmness in the air, an unhurried sense that lingered. No breath of remorse. In that moment, there was an enchanting stillness between 2 souls, finally embracing their emotions without any walls to hold them back. As we separated, silence enveloped us for once upon a time. I nestled against him, my head resting on his chest, absorbing the rhythmic beat of his heart. He ran his fingers through my hair, gently smoothing it back just once. "We can't continue down this path," he said, yet it lacked substance. "I understand," I murmured, yet I was aware that I had no desire to halt my journey. Not at this moment. Not when I had just begun to reclaim a sense of ownership over my body once more. Not when someone finally saw the way I glided, the rhythm of my breath, the way my pace lingered when I hesitated to part ways. As the evening unfolded, we gathered around the dinner table with my husband, the 3 of us, sharing a meal, creating an atmosphere where the events in the garden felt like a distant memory. I shared the salad. He filled the glass with wine, letting the rich liquid cascade into the vessel. My husband inquired about our thoughts on giving the kitchen cabinets a fresh coat of paint. We exchanged knowing glances and responded one after the other. The performance unfolded with perfect precision. And yet, I could sense the current pulsing just below the surface of the table. Our knees remained apart, yet I sensed that if they ever connected, I would stay right there, unwilling to pull away. Once we finished our meal, my husband retreated to the den, eager to dive into a recorded show that had caught his interest. I lingered in the doorway, dish towel in hand, observing the two significant men in my life, coexisting beneath the same roof, sharing the same breath of life. One of them cherished me out of devotion, while the other was drawn to me as if by an irresistible force. It was the most unforgiving, a certain closeness. That night, as we lay in bed, I felt my husband's hand gently brush against my shoulder. His fingers danced softly, exploring with a gentle hesitance. I looked at him driven by a deep curiosity, rather than any sense of duty. I had to recall the essence of this experience. He pressed his lips against mine. I allowed him to proceed. Yet my body remained silent, no longer responding as it once did. My thoughts wandered to the garden, to calloused hands resting on my waist, to momentoffs that ignited and remained. As I shut my eyes, a world of imagination unfolded within me. Allow the moment to drift away. In the shadows, a revelation unfolded. A haunting experience that sent shivers down my spine. I felt no fear of being discovered. I feared I might not. In the days that followed, a facade of tranquility enveloped everything. I carried out my tasks with a rhythmic grace, crafting meals, responding to messages, and folding laundry as if each action was part of a well-told tale. As my husband stepped out the door for work, I leaned in and planted a moment of, on his lips, a small gesture of love. When he came back home, I eagerly inquired about his day, curious to hear the tales of his adventures. On the surface, I appeared unchanged. Within a deep shift had occurred akin to the displacement of furniture, in a space I could no longer traverse in the shadows. My body held on to a memory that refused to diminish, and even more troubling, it seemed to cling to it with a fierce determination. Every part of me still recalled the weight of his hand's grip. At my waist, the measured rhythm of his breath, the gentle heat of his fingers, and the tender touch at the small of my back. These were experiences waiting to be shared. They had transformed into memories that lingered with me like a fragrance on my skin. In the hush of the afternoon, in the serene moments before slumber, in the void where everything else fades away, I sensed their presence. After that second moment there was a pause, a moment where neither of us took the next step, not in any physical way. However, this file exceeds a duration of 30 minutes. Experience limitless possibilities at turboscribe.ai, where you can transcribe files that stretch up to 10 hours long.